Metro, thinking the rest of the world was burnt to a crisp in the war. But they just circled Moscow with those jammers, and we were none the wiser. How perfect of them!
Pack your things, leave somehow. Blackbird song is over now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dreamality. Welcome to my review of Metro Exodus. Is this game worth your money? Is it worth your time? That's the question I'm here to help answer. Let's begin by breaking down the story. The story begins in a post-apocalyptic Russia, specifically Moscow. Like the first two games, the main protagonist is Artyom. Artyom and his friends discover there's life outside of Moscow, and they go in search of a better place to live, in search of a government. Their adventure takes place over a year's time, and they travel from place to place via train. There are a handful of characters here, and along the way you're introduced to more. You meet and help other survivors. You also run into some dangerous groups, such as these religious fanatics. The story is told entirely through the eyes of Artyom. Conversations will play out in front of you, you'll hear chatter over the radio, and you'll find documents around the map. Let's start with the positives. The highlight of the story for me was the final act. I really enjoyed the form of storytelling there. It was entirely visual, no talking, you're seeing all these hallucinations. Being the third game in the Metro series, I like that this is accessible to newcomers like myself. If you're new to this series, you'll be able to follow along with ease. I really enjoy the premise in the setting, trying to find a better place to live, and it takes place in a post-apocalyptic Russia. There were a couple of times where I felt the humanity of these characters, such as when Artyom holds his wife's hand just a bit longer as she walks away. I liked some of the groups that I met along the way. They offered different perspectives for how people are living in this post-apocalyptic world. Lastly, I like that there are different endings depending on how you played the game. Moving on to the negatives. Goodness me, let's start with the writing. It's terrible. The dialogue between characters is bad. When characters are talking to you, it's horrible. Outside of the loading screens where Artyom is reading from a journal, he's a voiceless protagonist, so people talk to you but he doesn't say anything. Other games have this same kind of storytelling, but it is done so poorly here.
You made it. I was worried sick while you were running around in that terminal. Yermak said you brought the sleeper carriage. You are simply the best. Sorry I'm talking so much, but I missed you. Okay, back to business.
Honestly, it's everything. It's the writing, it's the awkward delivery, it's the direction. Choosing when to insert certain lines of dialogue, and random pauses throughout.
Artyom, Anna, they are with
The order
us.
leaves no one behind. All right, Spartan.
I didn't care about any of the characters. The goal here is to live to see tomorrow, but I don't care if any of these characters died today. The motivation behind some of the later missions is to save some of these characters, but again, I didn't care about them. I will say the game does try sometimes to make you care. It's obvious they want you to care about Artyom's wife, but I couldn't. What made me want to care about these characters were the littlest of things, like holding that hand for just a second longer. But time and time again, everything feels forced. It feels unnatural. My last complaint is a lot of the radio chatter, specifically when it's used to build the villains. I wish I could turn it off. If only I had $1 for every time I heard this.
Listen up, everyone. The Baron is about to speak. Listen up, everyone. The Baron is speaking. Gentlemen. As you are, everyone. The Baron has spoken.
There are 5 difficulties to choose from. I applaud the range in difficulty here because each one does offer a noticeably different experience. I played mostly on normal and I thought it was challenging, but normal is child's play compared to the Ranger hardcore difficulty. If you want the most stress-free experience possible, you want to enjoy this world, enjoy the story, the reader difficulty is perfect for you. Enemies are very easy to kill. Resources are all over the place. Artyom is basically a tank, it's very hard to die. so don't be intimidated by the presentation. If you want something that's very easy, it's here. And I like that. I like that there's something for every type of player. You can change the difficulty whenever you want. That's a fantastic option if you get stuck somewhere and you don't have all the time in the world. Playing mostly on normal, I did jump around to all the difficulties. The game took me about 12 hours to beat. That was with me exploring and doing most of the side missions. The side missions follow a pretty similar pattern. Go to a place, kill some enemies, pick up an item, or free some prisoners, that's it. As far as side missions go in video games, these were pretty weak. Here to lengthen the experience and not much else. The main story missions were better, but there were only a couple that stood out to me. One of my favorites had me underground, fighting off spiders with light. I would hear the spiders coming from different directions and I would have to turn fast enough to stop that spider from attacking me. My favorite mission was in the late game. There was a nice stealth section there. There are still linear levels here, but for the first time there are some open maps. On the map you'll find main story missions and side missions. Personally, I didn't find the side missions all that rewarding. Sometimes I got loot, other times all I got was a thank you. In order to get to your objectives, you can follow a map or a compass. There were a handful of moments where I had no idea where I had to go, how to get there. The reason it was frustrating was because the compass would lead me in the wrong direction. I probably spent about 40 minutes searching areas from top to bottom, looking for the objective, when it wasn't even remotely close to where I had to go. I'm not saying I want the game to hold my hand, but I value my time and this game was wasting it. At its core, Metro is an atmospheric survival experience. Resources are scarce, enemies are tough. Even on normal, I had to use my bullets sparingly. In the environments, you'll find chemicals and crafting materials. You can craft ammo, health items, grenades, throwing knives. Items can be crafted at workbenches, which are spread across the map. RTM carries a backpack with him so you can craft some items on the go, but you can't craft ammo through the backpack. The crafting system is very simple, not much depth here. I do like the inclusion of the backpack. Throughout your journey, you'll pick up a number of weapons and weapon attachments. I liked playing around with the different attachments for the weapons, and I like the fact that you can change the attachments for the guns you're carrying at any time through the backpack. Throughout the map, you'll find bunkers, and in these bunkers, you can change the time of day. There's a day and night cycle. What's the difference? During the day, there are more human enemies roaming the map. At night, there are more monsters. There's a good variety of enemies here. I don't mind the game's slow nature, but maybe it's because I'm playing on console that the controls feel wonky to me. They're not as fluid, not as responsive as I would like. Like leaving this train. The game never accepted the command on the first try. There's a noticeable delay, and it's just another straw to throw on this camel's back. Because of the large open maps where you can free roam, I was hoping exploration would be more rewarding than it is, more fun than it is. This is the gameplay loop. You walk around, you kill enemies, occasionally you find crafting materials to craft bullets to kill more enemies. That's it. Other than survive for the sake of surviving, there isn't much to do here. Let's talk replay value. There are two different endings. The ending you get is determined by how you play. Basically lethal versus non-lethal. Those are two very different play styles, and that adds to the replay value. Those offer two very different gameplay experiences, and you take into account the different difficulty levels, and you have some pretty good replay value here. If you enjoy the game. Personally, I have no desire to replay it. Now it's time for some additional thoughts. Playing on the Xbox One X 4K HDR, the game looks really good. It's definitely one of the better looking games I've played on the system, but that experience isn't consistent. You can tell some areas didn't get as much love. Some additional positives about the visuals. I do like how the first person perspective is presented, how it looks when you have your mask on and you take damage, those cracks show up. The enemies look really good up close when those grab animations happen, and I really like the clouds of smoke you can see after shooting. There's no performance mode, the game runs at 30 frames. Frame-wise, the experience was stable, but I did run into a handful of bugs. I got stuck in the environment, the game froze, it crashed. Luckily, there's a good checkpoint system. But goodness me, the loading times. People were talking up to 2 minutes. Odds are you're going to die a lot in this game, at least I did. Having to wait 40, 50 seconds after each death was very irritating. When I think about how much time I wasted with loading screens in this game, it makes me sad inside. The loading times made me not want to play the game. The entire game can be played in English or Russian. The English voice acting is atrocious. The game has some good music. The sound mixing, though, isn't very good. Footsteps are way too loud. Volume-wise, no one bothered adjusting the voices. People talk over each other, everyone's talking at the same volume. It becomes nothing more than noise. I was looking forward to Metro Exodus. 2 years in a row, it won a spot on my best of E3 list. Look how different the graphics are, by the way. I mean, come on. Quick recap. The story is okay, but the voice acting, the directing, the delivery is terrible. The core gameplay is good, the survival element, the different enemies, monsters, but most of the missions mesh together, they're forgettable. Exploration wasn't rewarding, there was very little motivating me to continue this journey. This is a good-looking game with a decent soundtrack, but the sound mixing is pretty poor. I ran into bugs that crashed the game, and it's nearly impossible to enjoy any level of challenge this game offers when the loading times are this bad. Here's my final verdict. I say Metro Exodus is a decent game. There are some good things here, and then there are a lot of bad things. Ultimately, I'm disappointed in this one. For me, it wasn't worth my money or time. If you're interested solely in the survival element of the game, I recommend waiting for it to drop on sale. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Now it's time to share yours. If you have played the game, let me know what you think. Metro fans, how does this one compare to the others? What system are you playing on, and how are you liking it? I hope this review was helpful. I hope it was enjoyable. If you have any questions, feel free to ask down below. And as always, thanks for watching.